Hello, we are 25 years into the 21st century, so it's a good excuse to make some lists, and I love a book list. Recently, the Sunday Times brought out their 25 best novels of the 21st century so far, according to them. So I want to go through and tot up how many of these books I've actually read and whether I agree or disagree with their choices and give some thoughts on these books. And then I want to offer up some of my own alternative suggestions of what I think are the best novels of the century. Now, they've made some rules about which books they have picked. They are only choosing novels from Britain or Ireland, and they are only choosing one novel per author because hilariously they said otherwise this would turn into a Hilary Mantel bibliography. And they've also structured their list in an interesting way where they go chronologically until the last 5 novels, and then they say these are their absolute top 5 novels. So I don't think they've not ranked the other 20 books, but the last 5 books they have ranked from 5 down to 1. So I'm really excited to see what is number 1, and I'd be really curious to know how many of these books have you read, and what do you think of their choices? Do you agree with them? Do you think there are any books that are obviously missing from this list, or are there other books that you would like to highlight as some of the best that you have read in this century so far? Now, very first, at the very beginning of this list, is the novel White Teeth by Zadie Smith. And this is such an epic story. It was published in 2000, and it follows the lives of 2 men that have known each other throughout their lives, and follows their families and changes occurring in London over a long period of time. And it is just such a sweeping and vibrant story, and it's a very personal one for me because when I moved to London from America, that occurred in 2000. So it was exactly when this novel came out. There was so much excitement about this new author, Zadie Smith, and so this is a book that I read soon after coming to this country, and it's closely tied to that. Now, since then, this is going to sound like I'm bragging, but it's also just a crazy thing that has occurred in the past several years. I have been asked by the publisher of Zadie Smith to interview her about her most recent novels, which is an incredible honor. So exciting. She's such an intelligent and fascinating person to talk to, and what she does in her novels. So I don't know how this has happened, but it's an incredible honor, and so I get so excited when she has a new novel coming out because it means, I get to talk to Zadie again. The Amber Spyglass by Philip Pullman, and I guess they had to choose this 3rd novel in the His Dark Materials trilogy because it was also published in 2000, and this trilogy follows 2 children as they wander through a series of alternative universes. And I'm ashamed to say I've never read this or any of the books in the Dark Materials trilogy or anything by Philip Pullman, and I've been wanting to for so long. I keep meaning to get them. I have this Everyman's edition that I keep meaning to go through, though it's quite hefty, so I have to carve out some time to read this. But also, he has now written a trilogy of prequels, or I think Philip Pullman calls them equals, to these novels called the Book of Dusts. And the 3rd book in that series is due to be published later this year. So it seems like a good idea or time to jump on board with this series and finally get to these novels, and so I can catch up with the entire series. But if you have read these and if you're looking forward to the last book, I would love to hear about that. English Passengers by Matthew Kneale. This was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and the narrative revolves between the perspectives of 20 different characters who are on a voyage looking for the Garden of Eden in Tasmania, and it's about the decimation of the native population there. And I've also not read this novel. Since this list is going through chronologically, I wasn't reading a lot of the newest fiction coming out at the time, so or wasn't as on top of it as I am now. But this historical novel sounds really fascinating, and it is one that I do want to get to. Any Human Heart by William Boyd, another novel that I've not read yet. This is a fictional journal of a character named Mount Stuart and episodes of his life across the 20th century and across several continents, and following different relationships of his and literary endeavors and significant periods of the last century. The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon, and I have read this novel. I think it is excellent. It's a mystery story narrated by a 15-year-old boy who, it's not explicitly stated, but he's probably on the autistic spectrum, so he has a different way of viewing and processing the world, and he discovers that a neighbor's dog has been killed, speared through with a pitchfork, and he goes on the case to try to find out what happened, and so uncovers things about his neighborhood and people in his life that he didn't know before. And the narrative is mesmerizing, and it's such a warm-hearted and wonderful story. I don't know if I'd immediately characterize it as one of the best novels of this century, but it was a very different kind of book. Notes on a Scandal by Zoe Heller. This isn't a novel I would immediately think of either, but I'm so glad it is included in this list because I loved reading this novel. It follows an older female educator who befriends a younger teacher, and she discovers that younger female teacher is having an affair with a teenage boy at their school, and so she starts kind of emotionally blackmailing this younger teacher because she also feels a strong pull towards her, and the story is so juicy and mesmerizing, and it's a fantastic gripping tale. 1983 by David Peace, and this is the final novel in a quartet of novels called the Red Riding Quartet that follows three characters: a rent boy on the run, a lawyer involved in the case, and a corrupt police officer. And I have heard really great things about this quartet of books from a friend of mine, so I do want to get to reading them. Mother's Milk by Edward St. Aubyn, which I've not read. I've only read his first novel, Nevermind, which I did love, and I've wanted to continue on reading his book. But this novel is a sequel to a trilogy of novels he wrote, autobiographical trilogy about growing up in an upper-class family and wrestling with issues to do with alcoholism, drug addiction, family relationships, and child molestation. And so, yeah, there are lots of books that are part of a larger series of books. So it's not, if you want to read all 25 of these novels, it'll be hard to limit yourself just to these books because so many of them are part of these larger series, which is like a bit of a cheat. Brooklyn by Colm Toibin, a novel that follows an Irish girl who travels to America and a relationship she forms there, how she starts working there, but she is also drawn back to Ireland and her family and a potential relationship back there. And this is a novel I loved so much, and one that I found so surprising in that when I was reading it, I thought, oh, this is fine, this is enjoyable, but I don't really get why this is such an extraordinary book. But then once I get to a certain point of the book, and there's a kind of dilemma that the main character goes through, I found it utterly gripping, and so it's one of those books I'm so glad I kept reading this book because it was fantastic. And yes, there has been a sequel to this novel published since then, Long Island, and also there's Nora Webster, which is a kind of like side story, which is a character that appears in both of these books as well. But Toibin is such an amazing writer. So yes, I absolutely agree with this choice. A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing by Eimear McBride, a winner of the Women's Prize. And yes, I absolutely agree that this novel belongs on the list. It's a kind of stream of consciousness story, another Irish novel following a girl and her relationship with her disabled brother and her very religious mother and her own burgeoning sexuality. It is written in such a compelling and different way. I don't think anyone else is writing like Eimear McBride. And this is a novel that it took me a while to get into because of the style of the prose. But once I started reading them aloud, the story just came alive for me, and I ended up loving it. Outline by Rachel Cusk. Now, this is a novel that I felt quite ambivalent about. It follows a woman who is at a certain stage in her life. She goes to a different country, and she's just kind of got out of a relationship, but we know barely any details about her life because the novel is very much about the people she encounters, the way that people project onto her and her understanding and receiving that, and so not wanting to give any details about her life. So it's written in a really fascinating way. I did find it a very compelling book, although the novels that I've read by Rachel Cusk since then I've really not got on with as much. So I don't think she's an author for me, but this is a novel and style of writing that has been incredibly influential. So I do think grudgingly, I agree it should be on this list. The Green Road by Enright. Now, I love Enright's writing. I probably wouldn't pick this novel to be on the list. I did really enjoy reading it. It follows a woman in Ireland whose adult children are returning home, and about the various relationships between these family members and the arguments they have, and the warm connections that still persist between them. And I did, really enjoy this book. I think my favorite novel by Anne Enright is The Forgotten Waltz, which is one of the books that in her library that isn't discussed as much. So I would really highlight this book over the Green Road, The Forgotten Waltz, which is about an affair, but it told in such a new way that, I thought it was fantastic. Days Without End by Sebastian Barry. I love that there are so many Irish writers on this list, and I absolutely agree with this choice. I think it's one of the best historical novels I've ever read. It follows a young Irishman who leaves Ireland to escape the famine to go to America, where he fights in the Indian Wars and eventually in the Civil Wars, but also he meets another young man who he forms a deep and loving bond with him. So it's in part a gay love story, but it evokes the period of time in such an evocative and powerful way. There's also a sequel to this novel, which I've not read yet, and it is also part of a larger group of books that follow a certain Irish family. But the way that Sebastian Barry writes, it's so lyrical and precise and evocative and so powerful. Golden Hill by Francis Spufford. This is another historical novel. I've not read it yet, but it follows a mysterious British traveler who goes to New York City in 1746, and there he upends the lives of the merchant and political classes. I've heard such great things about this novel. I've been wanting to get to it, so I can't really judge whether it belongs on this list or not. I have read a later novel of his called Perpetual Light, which I did really admire. I wouldn't count that amongst the best novels of the century so far, but I think he is a really great writer. Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. Her very first novel, and I love when you put Sally Rooney into a search engine. The first question that comes up that people ask is, why is Sally Rooney so popular? And this novel, as you would expect, follows the interactions and conversations between four friends, both online, in person, about sex and friendships, about art and literature, about politics and gender, and a whole wide range of subjects. And I did enjoy this novel, although I maybe it's basic of me, but I do think her novel Normal People is her very best book. I've read all of her novels, and yeah, that is still my top. I'm afraid, but I think Intermezzo would come second in my rankings. But yeah, if you have a favorite Sally Rooney book, or if you do not like Sally Rooney, let me know about that. The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. I have read this. I think it's a great retelling of events from the Iliad from the point of view of a woman who is abducted and given to Achilles. Yeah, I really enjoyed reading it. I don't think I'd count it amongst the top books of the century so far, and I've not read the other two books in the trilogy, although I keep meaning to. Yet another literary trilogy. Now We Shall Be Entirely Free by Andrew Miller. This is another historical novel that is set during the times of the war against Napoleon. It's also meant to be quite thrilling, but I have not read it yet. I would be keen to, because I do love a good historical novel, and I've read his more recent novel, The Land in Winter, which was so atmospheric and wonderful. So he has a great style of writing, and I do want to read more of his work. Milkman by Anna Burns. And I had a somewhat mixed experience reading this novel. I really enjoyed aspects of it, that it follows a young woman in Northern Ireland who finds herself kind of caught up in the troubles and the politics of her community, even though she really just wants to read. That's all she wants to do. And I also love the depiction of the sisters in this, who are this kind of chorus and group that follow her around and say, oh, Mammy wouldn't like it if she knew you were doing this, and they're pestering after her. But there are other parts of the book that I just found I wasn't entirely able to get into it. It's a novel that I have been wanting to revisit, because I know so many people loved it so much, and it won the Booker Prize, and yeah, Anna Burns is great, and she hearing her speak, it is so fascinating and insightful, and yeah, and so I will return to this one day, but I have to say, for now, it wouldn't be on my personal list. Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stuart, and this novel just completely captured my heart as it follows a young man in Glasgow in the 1980s as he's wrestling with his sexuality and feelings of alienation, but also very much dealing with his mother, who's an alcoholic. And I felt it was slightly unfair that some readers have said, oh, I've read stories of alcoholism like this before, but there's so many scenes in this novel that I think are so striking and memorable, and that just bring tears to my eyes if I start thinking about them. I feel like they're so powerful in charting the disease of alcoholism and the real effect on it. And also, this novel has a special place in my heart. It is very much connected to a time like during lockdown and watching the Booker Prize ceremony from home, and also getting the opportunity to immediately interview Douglas Stuart after he won that award. So I do love this novel so much, and yes, I agree with it being on the list. The Beasting by Paul Murray, a novel which completely swept me up in it and took me by surprise, because I'd read the author's previous novel, which The Mark in the Void, which I thought was okay, but not really all that good. But The Beasting, oh, this story of an Irish family, very troubled Irish family, and moving between their different perspectives. And it is, even though it's such a long novel, it is so incredibly gripping, because at the end of each section, it ends on like a cliffhanger, and you want to know what how it plays out and what happens, and the way he suspends the reader's attention for so long, or at least my attention for so long, that I was completely enthralled by this story. And the ending of this novel, the readers will have so many different opinions on it. I have my own particular opinions on it, and I made a whole video talking about my theory about the ending of this novel. So if you want to discuss that with me, the ending of it and what you think happened or what you hoped happened, I would love to hear about that. Are you ready? We are at the top 5 of this list, and at number 5 there is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. And this novel follows a group of English students in a kind of alternative 1990s Britain. And there is a twist in this story, which I won't give away, but once it's revealed what's happening, this story does become very gripping. Now, I feel somewhat ambivalent about this book because, I mean, it's not my personal favorite of Ishiguro's works. I have been wanting to revisit it, especially because I got this 20th anniversary edition recently, and it comes with a new introduction by the author. I think he's incredible in his prose styles, but this is probably my least favorite of his books. I know for a lot of readers it's their favorite of his. My favorite of his is probably The Unconsoled, but that wasn't published in the 2000s. But I also thought Clara and what's the full title of that book? Clara and the Sun. How could I forget the title of that novel? But anyway, that novel I think is fantastic and emotionally gripped me so much. So yeah, I will go back to this at some point. But if you have a favorite Ishiguro, I'd love to hear about that. Number 4 is Atonement by Ian McEwan, and this novel is set in pre-World War II. At the very beginning, it follows a girl and something she sees or maybe doesn't see, and something she says about it, and a choice she makes, and then the consequences of that over a long period of time, but also following changes in the country and the politics and what's happening at the time. And so yeah, I think this is probably Ian McEwan's best novel of the 21st century. I think it is a fantastic novel. It wouldn't be amongst my personal top choices. There are lots of other books of his, or at least the other books of his that I've read that he's written recently, I've really not enjoyed as much. But yeah, this is a fantastic historical novel. Number 3 is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. Probably the shortest novel on the list, but such a powerful one, following an Irish man in a small community in the lead up to Christmas, and something he discovers, and then the choice that he has to make about whether he is going to do something about this, what he is going to do, how this will impact his family and his position in the community, and is based off from a real tragedy that occurred in Ireland. And so this is such a powerful novel. Keegan's writing is so precise and impactful and it's so incredible. It deserves all the praise that it has got. And yes, I definitely agree that it's one of the top books of this century so far. At number 2 is The Line of Beauty by Alan Hollinghurst, a story that follows a young man from a humble background who ingratiates himself with a politically ambitious family in 1980s Britain, and the fallout of that, in which he eventually ends up dancing with Margaret Thatcher at a party. And that is such a fantastic scene. But Hollinghurst's prose are so well crafted and beautiful. It's just a joy reading him. I think all of his novels are excellent in the way he writes about gay life in such a fascinating way, but also charts periods of time in this country's recent history over decades. I think is so well done. Now, this is a proof copy I have of this novel, but I have a little story behind it, because before I started doing bookish things online and started having interactions with publishers and being in the incredibly privileged position of being sent books in advance before they're published, I was such a geek. I would go on used book websites and order copies of books before they were published, because they weren't supposed to sell proof copies of books, but you could find them on there. And I was so eager to read new novels, and I didn't have any connections with publishers at that time that I would go on and buy copies like this. So I did buy this proof copy beforehand and went to see him talk about it and have him sign it for me. And I absolutely agree. One of the best novels of this century so far. And finally, we have made it. We are at number 1. Their choice is Bring Up the Bodies by Hilary Mantel, the second book in her literary trilogy, Thomas Cromwell trilogy about life at court of Henry VIII. And this novel follows a stage when Henry marries Anne Boleyn, and following the trajectory of that tragic marriage, royal marriage. And this, as they say in the article, I mean, it's so difficult to choose between the books in this trilogy, and really they should be seen as just one big book. And I'd definitely recommend reading all of the books in this trilogy, as well as all of Hilary Mantel's work. I mean, she was such an amazing writer, and this novel in particular, and I think it is, out of the trilogy, it's probably, the story is the most concentrated and impactful. So I do agree of listing this book over Wolf Hall or The Mirror and the Light, but yeah, all of them are fantastic. And also, I think the very last line of this novel is one of the best final lines in all of literature. And if you've not read this book yet, I won't reveal what that is. I'll let you read the book and discover this line on your own. But it is so good, as is everything that Hilary Mantel has written. So that is the list. Wait, how many of these books have I read? I need to go and add them up. Wow, I've read 18 of these 25 novels. So that's quite a good hit rate. But I'd love to hear in the comments below, how many have you read, and what do you think of their choices? Now, I want to offer some alternatives to these books that they have suggested. And I've kind of cheated, or at least I've not gone by their rules and not only picked novels from Britain and Ireland, but these are 5 other books that I would count amongst the best novels of the 21st century so far. And I could say so much about all of these books, and I have made separate reviews of each of these books, so I'll put links to my reviews of these in the comments below if you want to know more of my thoughts about these titles and why I think they are so absolutely extraordinary. So yeah, definitely highlight these, but there are so many more that I could pick. I kind of just randomly went around my shelves and I was like, oh yeah, this, yeah, definitely this, but I'm sure there are plenty of other books I could pick. But I would love to know about some of your alternative choices in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video and this fun going through the list, and I hope you're doing well, and let's hope that there are some more amazing novels published this century, although we have quite a lot to be getting on with and plenty more that I haven't read yet that I still need to read. And so yeah, have a great day. I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.